Greetings YouTube, Kudou here. I've never actually done something like this, so I wanted to kind of do it, kind of see how it went. I'm going to do a live deck profile. I'm not going to use my regular strategy of just going and clicking save as on a bunch of images and then showing them to you over a black screen, because I actually have live cards that I can show you. Um, excuse me. There's a deck that I've been running since Phantom Forces came out. There's a Pokemon for you, by the way, that a lot of people have been, I want to say, underestimating. People like Puka from the Top Cut and a lot of other professionals really kind of wrote this deck off. And I've been running it since it came out, and this is actually, it's the best deck in Barstow, and currently it's placing first and second at Victorville. So, like best in two cities, it isn't like super great, but I feel like my version of the deck is doing well enough that I'd like to share it. So, yesterday was a pretty big tournament. I went. There were like 20-ish kids. I say kids, like really kids playing a children's card game, laughable. There were about 20 dudes there, and the deck took second, but it took second because in my third match my opponent cheated, and I didn't have proof that he cheated, so we had to let it go. And the kid that cheated was also a regular that really knew the owners super well, so obviously my word against his didn't go very well. Like they pretty much told me that like the only way to make it fair was to like it went down to final turns, and you know how final turns work. Each player gets three more turns: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when it got to me being the very last turn, I pulled this really sick pull that ended up winning me the match because he had four prizes and I had five, and I ended up playing a card, Lysander, to pull out an EX and one-shot it to put me down to three prizes, and with him at four prizes, I won the game. And he was perfectly fine with everything up until then because he was pretty sure he was going to win. And then he ended up saying that he had another turn left, and I had to very politely correct him and tell him no, he did not have another turn left, that the match was over. But he insisted that he had another turn left, and he told a huge bunch of lies, and everybody called him out on it. But the judges knew him, so the judges let it go, and he ended up getting another turn, and he ended up coming back and killing me. Well, but it's fine, water under the bridge. Happened yesterday, so why worry about it today? The deck would have been first if not for that, but the deck came in second place regardless. And he didn't even place first. That's what bothers me. Okay, one more second to rant on this. He didn't even place first. Like he took away my chance to get first, but then he ended up placing like fifth. What is that nonsense? So anyway, we're gonna be getting onto the deck profile now. I'm sorry, like I'll talk about how my other matches went after the profile, but I know some people just really kind of want to see the deck, and it's gonna be hard to talk about the deck out of context. I'm really kind of a nerd when it comes to sleeves and mats. I'm really cosmetic. I really like just nice looking stuff. So this mat here is the Eevee mat that I use when I'm going to like Pokemon tournaments and stuff. Some kids do kind of show up at Pokemon tournaments. Like normally I run something a little more risque, shall we say, than this. I run well, what's a really nice way of putting it? I'm very much a fan of the female form. Uh, I think that's a nice way of saying it. I like naked chicks. I like running super just like etchy, erotic like playmats and stuff. But kids show up to Pokemon. I'm like, come on. So cute girls is all I need. Cute always kind of outdoes sexy anyway, and this mat is absolutely adorable. This was a wallpaper actually that a guy on eBay turned into a mat for me. He's very, very reasonable. I'm sure you'll find him if you just look up custom play mat. He cut me a little bit of a deal because I've done some advertising for him. So I got this mat for about $25, and I really can't complain. The sleeves I'm rocking are these here because it's a Gengar deck, by the way. If you couldn't tell by the title of the video, it's a Gengar deck. And I'm running these because, as you can see, these are just regular old purple sleeves with an oversleeve. The oversleeve is a Toho original, so If you know anything about Toho, you should recognize the sleeves. I'm running it like this because it's kind of cool. It's like purple with the red eyes. It looks kind of like Gengar's eyes, and then it's got like the little like popping lines, so it's like Gengar staring at you, and he's ready to come at you. I actually positioned my prizes like this, lining up, so it just looked like a line of Gengar eyes, and it's perfect because I run 3 Gengar, and it looked like 3 Gengar staring up at you. So that's kind of the story behind the sleeves. Let's get on to the deck. Whoa, guys, I'm actually doing this after I've already done everything else. This is the deck box that I use. Sorry, I kind of left the deck box out, but cosmetics, obviously, I'm gonna splice this in somewhere, so you're gonna see this a lot earlier than it's supposed to. I actually did this after the video was over, but I've talked for enough. This is gonna add like another minute or so. I use the Trixie deck box. Uh, I'm not really that big a fan of MLP, but I do think Trixie was a really cool character. I do hope they brought her back in some of the other episodes, so if I do go back and start watching it again, I get a little more Trixie. Trixie was awesome, has a nice name. Um, and I also love that look on her face because she's like, oh yeah, I got this. I know I'm going to win. And yeah, I like that. So this is over. So as a Gengar deck, first card we'll be looking at obviously is Gengar EX himself. Very underrated card. This guy's just so deadly and nobody believes in him because everybody says that he's a worse version of Donphan. Sorry if you can hear my parents talking in the background. I can't really do anything about that, and I'm not going to restart the entire video just because they're talking. So, Gengar EX, he hits, he comes back, and that's pretty much it. Like, if you don't know anything about Gengar EX, he pretty much does the Donphan thing where, for 3 energy, a Psychic, 2 colorless, he hits for 60, he retreats, he leaves the opponent, I'm sorry, he leaves the opponent's Pokemon poisoned, and he retreats out into something else, just like Donphan does. We have a couple of things that I feel like make it better in a psychic deck than in a fighting deck, but obviously fighting decks have some really overpowered stuff too. Another thing that I really like about him is for 1 colorless, you can actually snipe things off the bench. You can just leave 3 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. This is really good. This actually ended up winning me my very last match. It's just such a good thing to have. And it's also a really good thing to use when you're setting up. Like, Donphan doesn't really need any setup, and that's kind of the cool thing is, like, you put 1 energy on him, and he's good to go. Man, he is hitting and leaving and hitting and leaving, and, like, you don't really need anything. With this, like, you don't really have that. It does take, like, 2 turns to set up, but you can start setting 3 damage counters on stuff while you're waiting, soften some stuff up. Magic numbers are really a huge part of Pokemon, and this lets you hit magic numbers a lot more efficiently, I want to say. So yeah, that's Gengar EX. Main guy. Pretty much as soon as Phantom Forces came out and I saw this card, that's when I knew that I had to be running Gengar in the next format. I don't care what anybody says, I'm rocking 1 Gengar EX Mega. He's not something that you need. Like, I really only pulled him off to do something efficiently in 1 game. I think I pulled it off in 2 games, but he didn't really do anything the second game. His attack, if you don't know, is Phantom Gate, and it lets you use one of your opponent's in-play Pokemon attacks. That's such a cool idea. I don't know why nobody likes this card. Like, there's a lot of really neat attacks floating around right now. One of my favorites is stealing the, what is it called? It's Mega Man X attack. I can't remember the name of it. It's something Bolt. I know that much. It's something Bolt. And you steal it, you deal 110 damage, and then you get 2 energies from your discard pile, and you start powering up another Gengar. I think that's so cool. Plus, he's got like 220 life. He's not going to be one-shot by anything. Like, even the ever so dreaded Yveltal has to attach at least a couple of energy to one-shot you. And I don't know. I just think this is a really cool card. I'm probably never going to not run one of these as long as I'm running Gengar because of just how many possibilities it has. One complaint that a lot of people have is, oh, well, like, if you do this, then it takes away your hit and run strategy. And I'm like, well, it's optional. Sometimes you don't need the hit and run strategy. Sometimes your opponent has some attacks that even they themselves don't know about because they'll play a card and it'll have like some kind of huge ridiculous energy cost or something, and they just kind of ignore that attack, and you can take full advantage of that attack because it doesn't matter how much it costs because you don't need to pay those costs. So, one Mega Gengar. To round up our EX lineup, I ran one Seismitoad. I actually this was one of the last minute changes I made. I ran this because the spot that I had this filled with earlier was Toxicroak EX. Toxicroak EX didn't do nothing for me. Toxicroak EX was really, really useless every single time. So this time I ran Seismitoad because I'm building a Seismitoad Slurpuff deck, and I gotta tell ya, this Seismitoad was useless. I didn't do it. I didn't do anything with it. I played it like over half of my matches. I never attached any energy to it. I never switched into it. I never did anything with it. Um, like the one kind of useful thing that Seismitoad did for me was he ate up a lot of Landorus's because like Landorus players would see him start freaking out and start putting damage counters on him and leaving my Gengars alone. So that was kind of neat. But other than being Landorus punching bags, nothing. It didn't do anything for me. Um, I feel like this kind of shows how unpotent Seismitoad is if you're not building around him. A lot of people are saying that he's a staple that needs to be in decks, and I heavily disagree. Getting on to our non-EXs, I've got a 3-3 line of Trevenant. Trevenant is sort of like the MVP of the deck. As great as Gengar is, if you don't have anything good to switch into, then he's kind of useless. Trevenant is a great thing to switch into. He is amazing. He was like the superstar. Whoa, sorry, I moved my camera a little bit. He was like the superstar of the entire tournament. Like, every time I switched into him, my opponent started flipping out because he's just so much better than Seismitoad. Some people are going to say Seismitoad's better. I disagree. You hit with Gengar for 60, they get poisoned, so they get 70 damage. You retreat out into one of these guys with a float stone, and all of a sudden your opponent just can't do anything. It's so glorious. I love it so much. For people who happen to not know, Trevenant, his effect is your opponent cannot play item cards. Everybody runs like 20 to 25 items, so locking off like a third of somebody's deck is just too good. This is one of the things that I feel makes Gengar a little bit better than Donphan, is the fact that we have access to something like this. I mean, with Donphan, I guess you could run it with this too, but it's not as useful, and you can actually attack with this in a Psychic deck, and its attack isn't too bad either. 60, 20 to 2 benched. I can't really complain about that. Like, Trevenant, MVP, All-Star. Some people are going to say that running 3 is a little too much. I thought so too at first. Putting in the third one was kind of a last-minute change, but having that third one kind of helped me out in my final match, so I can't really complain. I feel like it was a decent change. For people who are wondering, I was running a 2-2 line of Beartic before because I was really scared of Pyroar decks, and Beartic one-shots Pyroar. But the other thing, if anybody knows the deck at all, is it normally loses really heavily to a little deck called Yveltal, which is still floating around, and there are still people playing it in Victorville. And I got super scared, super panicked. I put in that second set of Trevenant, third set of Trevenant, I'm sorry, and I took out the other two, and I put in 2 Zekrom because I was super scared of Yveltal decks. I mean, I've never really had that much trouble with Yveltal decks, but we had like a really, really big player coming in. Probably not big to the rest of the world, but pretty big to small towns like Barstow and Victorville and stuff. And he was rocking Yveltal, and I didn't really know what I was going to do against it. So last minute, I bought these holographic Zekroms that look kind of nice actually off of this kid for $2 each. I don't know if that's a reasonable price or not. Like it seems reasonable because this is such a good staple card, but yeah, it's $2. Can't complain. So these guys didn't really do anything. Like I played one a little less than half of my matches, and I never really outraged for anything big. Like I was never stupid enough to like play one and then attach energy to it because The entire point is to take out Yveltal, and you don't want to give Yveltal more fodder. So what I would do is when my opponent played like an Yveltal or something, I would just kind of put Zekrom out there, and he would know not to attack, because if he couldn't deal enough damage to knock this out, then it would just come back. I would put a double colorless on it, swing with it, and one-shot it. So he was a really nice like mind game, but he didn't do anything that I really kind of wanted him to. So I don't know if I'm going to take him out. I'd like to actually take one of these guys out and maybe put in like a Jirachi, because Jirachi's just such a great card. You Ultra Ball into Jirachi, you play Jirachi, you get yourself a Juniper or a Colress or something, or a Lysander, and that's really neat. So I'm thinking of taking one of these out. I'll probably keep one in just to keep the mind games going, but he didn't really do as much as I really wanted him to. Last one we'll talk about. This is also something that I'm considering taking one out for, is another one of these guys. Sigilif is such a beast. I honestly don't know why he doesn't see more play in the area that I'm in. Sigilif's pretty much the reason why I was able to win against Yveltal in Landorus decks. This guy is hilarious. Like, you put him out there with like a float stone, and he just sits there and he looks at your opponent, and like your opponent gets so mad because they can't do anything, because Garbodor's not really a thing anymore. So they just kind of look at him. Like, Landorus decks can kind of do something. Like in one of my last matches, my opponent played Landorus with a strong energy muscle band, and I was like, okay. And he attacked. This didn't take any damage, but obviously he could hit my Gengars in the back for 30. And because it's in the back, the Gengars don't have the resistance, so they take the full force of the 30 damage. Excuse me. And that kind of sucked, but overall, like, I got past 70 damage. He didn't take 70 damage, so I would have knocked 100 damage on my side of the field down to 30 damage on my side of the field, which is pretty good to me. I don't know about you guys, but I think that's pretty darn awesome. I wanted to bump this guy up to 2, but I don't know. I was so iffy because I didn't know if EX decks were still going to be a thing. I figured everything would be like Pyroars and Dawn Fans, and even though Dawn Fans stayed, Pyroar decks are gone completely in my area, so I'm not really worried about Pyroar anymore. It's all about getting around Dawn Fan, and this does that. So that's good. I keep moving my camera, and it's really bugging me. I'm sorry, guys. That's it for the Pokemon lineup. I feel is a pretty solid lineup. You don't really need that many Pokemon to run efficiently in the game of Pokemon anymore. Oh, and there's the wire. And I have a feeling that I just ruined everything. Let me see if I can turn this a little bit. Oh my god, I'm sorry guys. This is like the most unprofessional video that I've ever made. You could see how everything in my room is jerry-rigged right now. I've got like my laptop sitting on my desk, and then the wire from the webcam's hanging down like right here, and it's on top of the dance trophy that I got in 2005. Alright, moving on to energies. Um, Obviously, you gotta rock that 4 double colorless. It's so important. Some people are getting a little bit iffy about rocking things like this because, oh, but what about Hammer? What about Hammer? It's Hammer time. And I'm like, no. Like, even if they hammer it, you need it. It's important. The one thing about Hammer is your opponent has to draw Hammer, and very few people actually run 4 enhanced hammers. I know a lot of people are going to say, no, that's not true, like they do, or they can search it with Skyla or something like that. I don't care. Anytime your opponent doesn't have Hammer, you're stomping with this. And if your opponent does have Hammer, you're slowed down for a turn or two, and you got to play another one. Boo-hoo, have to play another one. You'll get over it, I promise, okay? Just go watch Frozen and let it go. And then on top of that, we're rocking 8 just regular old psychic energy. 2 of these used to be mystery energy. They're not mystery energy anymore, as you can probably see. One thing I was scared of, like, I'm gonna sound like a complete hypocrite now, but one thing I was kind of afraid of was the hammer. And the other thing was Aegislash. And the fact that I'm rocking Zekrom and Seismitoad. And I'm gonna be completely honest here, like, as neat as Mystery Energy is, it doesn't really do anything because it's pretty much just Float Stone, and like Float Stone doesn't stack. The reason that Strong Energy is so good is because getting that extra 20 damage stacks on top of Muscle Band, but having Float Stone on top of a Float Stone, it's still a Float Stone. You're still gonna get out of there for free. It doesn't really matter. Having double free is still just free. 0 times 2 is 0. So I went ahead and switched him out last minute for just a couple of Psychic Energy. Regular old Psychic Energy. Worked out well for me. There were some times where I had a Gengar with just 3 Psychic Energy, and nobody could really say anything against that. Aegislash couldn't answer to that. Uh, Hammers couldn't answer to that. Just having 3 good old Psychic Energy on a Gengar made him pretty unstoppable, and it was pretty lolzy. So just 8 regular Psychic Energy. The stadium that I used was Burbank. Some kids are saying, oh, but Dimensional Valley, and I think those kids are messed up in the head. Dimensional Valley is kind of a neat gimmick because your psychic energies, your psychic attacks cost 1 less energy, but most of the attacks in this deck, like you've got Sigilif's attack, Gengar's attack, so pretty much every single psychic fighter in my deck needs 1 psychic, 2 colorless. So pretty much instead of having a psychic and a double colorless, you need 2 psychics. It's still 2 energy attachments. It's still dumb. The only time that I've used Dimensional Valley and it's kind of come in handy is like first turn-ish. If I want to power up another Gengar, because I don't want like my first one to get knocked out or something, then you can kind of like use Dimensional Valley and then use the 1 cost attack on Gengar for free. Just start putting 3 damage counters on stuff. I keep moving it. Just keep putting 3 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon for no cost. That's kind of neato, bazito, but you lose so much damage not having Burbank that it's not even funny. I'll take Burbank over Dimensional Valley any day of the week because that extra 20 damage helps out a lot. It helps you hit magic numbers. The magic number right now is either 90 or 180. 180 one-shots things, 90 two-shots things. And with Burbank, if you hit with Gengar and they get poisoned, then it's 60, end of turn, goes up to 90. And even if they switch out that turn or do something like really cute to get rid of that poison, next turn you go in, you hit 60, end of turn they take 30. That is 1 dead Pokemon EX if I've ever seen one. If you happen to get this and Muscle Band, then it hits for 110, which doesn't really matter. But if you can get one or the other, then it's still good. I'm actually pretty light on Muscle Bands, which we'll see here in a second. So having the option of going one or the other is really helpful. And yeah, I actually used to run 3 of these, but before the match started, I took one of them out for a hammer. Actually, I ran a couple of hammers, which we'll see here in a second, and the hammers were actually really nice, so I really liked having them. I feel like 2's enough. Like, I pretty much had a Burbank up all the time. If my opponent really did want to try and like fight me for the stadium, then I was just kind of like, whatever. Like, I've got Muscle Band, so it doesn't really matter. But whenever they didn't and Burbank stayed, especially people who forgot about it, Burbank put in work. Burbank was really good. Alrighty, getting on here to my supporters. Let me mess with the camera some more because I don't know what I'm doing now. Alright, you can still see a little bit of the wire. It's right there. So, for Juniper, Juniper's my baby. I love Juniper. Juniper's so good. Giving up a hand of useless cards to get a hand of useful cards, too good. There were so many times where I was like, oh man, if I only had blah de blah, if I only had a double colorless, if I only had Mega Gengar, if I only had Gengar EX, if I only had one other thing. Juniper, 7 new cards. Oh look, I got that thing I was looking for. Probably not something that would have happened with N because my deck would have gotten cloggy from putting the useless stuff back in. Or, oh man, Chorus, pretty much same thing. Juniper is my favorite supporter right now. She's just so good. I really love the fact that they made the full art Juniper so we can still use Junipers until the full art Juniper expires. Because Sycamore, like I said before, I'm really cosmetic, and Sycamore's artwork is really stupid. It's pretty much just him like holding his arms out like he wants a hug. And I don't want to hug my opponent. I want to kill them. I want to kill them with cuteness, and that's what Juniper does. For N, he's important right now. I actually never got to play an aggressive N. For people who don't know, aggressive N is pretty much where you let your opponent get a whole bunch of prizes, and then like you go N, you only got one card in your hand. Surely I will win now until you draw your next supporter. Um, and there's really not really much I can say about him. Like he did what N does. He got me new cards at the beginning of the game. I always threw him away with Juniper after like turn 4. So he did his thing. Colress is my old favorite, second favorite now because Juniper is just such a boss. And I still really like him. I only run him at 2. I think most decks should really only run him at 2 because if you get him in your opening hand, he's dead. People aren't going to have enough benched Pokemon to really get that much use out of him. Like even you, like you fill up your bench in a few turns. But having him first turn is really useless because you need at least 3 turns to get that full bench and really get any benefit off of him. And even if you get a full bench, if your opponent's not setting up, you'll normally only get like 6 cards off of this guy. And that's not good. You don't want a Colress for 6. Like late game, you Colress for like 8 or 9. You Colress for 8 or 9 like a real man. You don't Colress for like 4 or 5. That's bullcrap. And the big old Lysander, a lot of people are knocking this guy down to 1. They're like, oh, versus Seeker. I don't need 2. That's a lie. Everybody needs 2 Lysander. Lysander is so good right now. Um, He's got really a whole bunch of uses. One of my favorite uses is if you bring out, like, if your opponent's really setting up that huge attacker, and you bring out something with no energies on it but a high retreat cost, then they can't play the game until they get, like, a floatstone or a switch. That's too good. That's way too awesome. And it's just so much fun to do because then that gives you a few turns to set up, and you can even knock out the thing that they have like sitting there in the meantime, or you can figure out a way to one-shot the thing that has a bunch of energy on it. So I really like this guy. This guy's okay in my book. Um, People are running one because Versus Seeker is a thing, and you can just Versus Seeker whenever you need one. But here's the thing. You have to play him that first time, or discard him that first time with a Juniper to actually Versus Seeker with him, okay? That's important. That is a very big stipulation. Beginning of the game, you put out 6 prize cards. If one of those is your Lysander, and you don't know which one it is, well, guess you're just not Lysandering this game. And that's awful. Having that second one at least puts him back in your deck, so you have a chance of drawing into him, discarding him, so that you can Versus Seeker with him. Run 2 Lysander, not 1. That's what I'm trying to say, guys. Skyla. I actually cut this Skyla down to 1 so I could put in the other hammer. And I have no regrets, no qualms whatsoever. I really only Skyla'd like once during the entire tournament. And like Skyla's really not that useful, guys. If it's a really important card, you're probably going to be running more than one of it anyway. So chances are just having a regular draw supporter instead of Skyla will get you that trainer that you really need. If you really needed one, like I admit that I think I used this to get a let's see here, what did I get it? I think I ended up getting like Spirit Link or something. Actually, I think I used it a couple of times. I think I used like one to get a Spirit Link and then another one to get a Juniper to play on my next turn. So really, like just having this is just a like easier way to get your good supporters. Like this is a bad supporter you have to run to get to your good supporters if you happen to not have them, or you're too poor to get a Jirachi like I am. And yeah, Skyla at 1 can be useful. I will take this out as soon as something better comes available to me, though. It's that simple. Pretty much we run Skyla because not every deck can be a fighting deck and have Karina. That's the way I look at it. So, getting on to our attachments, we have 3 Floatstone and 2 Muscle Band. Some people are going to rage. They're going to be like, what? You have less than 3 Muscle Band, but you have a full, like, 3 Floatstone? What is wrong with you? I kind of thought that too for a while. Believe me, at beginning of the tournament, I was freaking out like, oh my god, I need a third muscle band. I need to go get a third muscle band right now. Muscle bands at the place I was at were running like $5 or $6, so I didn't get one. But I went with this, and this worked out fine. I don't care what anybody says. Floatstone was way more useful than muscle band. Dealing that extra 20 damage is important, but it's even more important to have this on like a Trevenant or a Sigilif that you can switch out so that you don't get locked in place. Just way more important. That's so much better. Um, you put this on your Trevenant and you win the game. I'd rather win the game than deal 20 extra damage. It's like, do you want to win the game or do you want to deal more damage? Well, I don't know. The numbers are good though. I like numbers, but I'll win the game. Thanks. And that's what I did. Don't get me wrong, Muscle Band came in handy, but really Verbank did Muscle Band's job for it, so who cares? Getting onto our items, obviously one Spirit Link. You don't need any more than one. Even if you were running like 4 Gengar Mega EX, I would still say just run one Spirit Link. People are making a really big deal about having to end your turn when you Mega Evolve, and I don't think it's that big of a deal in a deck like this. Because if you're sitting behind a Trevenant or a Sigilif, Mega Evolving to end your turn, it really isn't that big of a deal because your opponent still has to deal with really annoying Pokemon, and then next turn you can switch out into that Mega and start hitting for big numbers. Um, Plus, Spirit Link can get kind of dead. One neat thing about having a Muscle Band on your Gengar is if you Mega Evolve and you steal somebody else's attack, then you steal that attack and deal it at plus 20. So that's kind of neato. Still, you need one Spirit Link because there are a lot of times where you don't want to have to end your turn, like you still have more setup to do, or there's an attack on your opponent's side of the field that you really, really do need to use like this turn, like a bolt or something. So I still like this. Run at one, no more than one ever. The ace spec I was using for the tournament was Scramble Switch. One of the main reasons that I use this over computer search is because computer search is really expensive and this is only like $5. So I went with Scramble Switch. Surprisingly enough, those Scramble Switch came through for me a couple of times where computer search wouldn't have. The deck doesn't run any regular Switch. Some people are going to say that that's really bad, but I feel like you don't need regular Switch right now because even if you do have to hard retreat, it's really not that bad because most of the things you retreat out of only cost like one, and that's really not that big of a deal. The only thing is like getting Trevenant out of there. Trevenant has a retreat cost of 3. He's so heavy, and I don't know how he can be heavy because he's a spooky ghost. So he should really be able to get out of there for free, but you know, whatever, I guess. Scramble Switch came through for me a few times where computer search wouldn't have. Admittedly, there are a couple of times where computer search would have been just as nice, but honestly, I didn't even use this that much. Like it got me out of a couple of tight jams, but like there were a lot of times where I had it in my hand with a Juniper and I was like, "Oh man, I've got a Juniper and get rid of my one Scramble Switch." Oh well, it's gone. So, I don't really care. Like A specs, they're good, but they're not something that I feel like decks really need to be running right now. Uh, 3 Ultra Ball. I just realized I don't think I'm running 4 of anything in this entire deck. Huh, that's really weird for me. Anyway, uh, the 3 Ultra Balls, super good. I really like Ultra Ball. Get you anything you need. You go out into a Gengar EX. Like one of my favorite things was I would never have a Gengar EX in my opening hand, but I'd have an Ultra Ball in my opening hand, which always meant that I did have a Gengar EX in my opening hand. Not only did I have a Gengar EX in my opening hand, but I had a means to search my deck and see exactly what I had prized, which is probably something that you shouldn't do, but you know, if you're gonna be looking anyway, metagaming, my favorite. 3 versus Seeker. Um, Before the tournament started, I was actually really heavily considering taking 1 versus Seeker out for maybe like a third hammer or something. Um, I want to go back in time and punch the me that ever said that in the face because versus Seeker was just such a clutch card. Later in the game, like if you just chorus these back into your deck, they will help you later, okay? Having one less of these probably would have lost me a couple of my matches because just being able to do this into a Juniper or do this into an N or something is so good, especially late game when I had like one or two prizes and my opponent ended me down to two cards. If one of the cards I got was a Versus Seeker, then who cares, okay? Oh, look at that, I have two cards. Oh, never mind, I played this and I played Juniper and now I have seven cards. Um, it's a really neat way to get out of things like that, or it's a really neat way to go into your Skyla and get something if you don't have any other better options. It's a good way to go into your Lysander and switch your opponent's Pokemon if you need to. Um, 3 versus Seeker, I considered running it down to 2. I think that's idiotic now. I would never run this thing at less than 3. It's too good. Oh god, I think I mixed everything up. No, I didn't. I'm a liar. Uh, 3 Robo Substitute. Before the tournament started, this was actually one of the cards that I was running at 4, I think. I took the fourth one out. I don't remember what I took it out for. I think I actually, looking over my stuff, I think I may have taken one of these out for the third float stone. Whatever. It doesn't really matter what I took it out for. I took the fourth one out, and I will never go back because these 3 Robo substitutes, I played all 3 in every single one of my matches. All of them. Every single match I had, I played all 3 Robo substitute. Having the fourth one wouldn't have helped me that much. Like, really, you only want to have one on the field at a time. Maybe 2, like having 2 on the field was something that happened a lot with me because I was trying to fill up the field for Colruses, like really big Colruses. Or I just wanted a lot of stuff to switch into with Gengar or something like that. So having 2 on the field at one time is fine, but having that one backup's good. I don't think running 4 is really necessary for any deck, really. Like even Donphan decks, like if you're running 4, like what are you doing, guys? Take one out and put in a hammer or something. Seriously. Robo Substitute is one of my favorite new trainers to come out of the new set, though. So this guy put in work. Robo Substitute for the win. The 2 hammers that I've been talking about pretty much this entire video, these are them. Enhanced Hammer really put in work too. Everybody rocked double colorless. Everybody did. Get rid of it. If they weren't rocking double colorless, they were rocking strong energy. It was one or the other, and I always had targets. No plasma decks this time. I wanted to say that like I rocked some plasma energy off and forced them into some secret triple triad thing or whatever it's called. I actually really want to be running a Plasma deck too, a Lugia deck, because I'm a really aggressive player, and Lugia is like one of my favorite Pokemon. So I want to be rocking that, but right now Gengar is winning me tournaments, so I do like winning tournaments. Um, Hammer, put in work. You already know Hammer. Special Energy are gone. Last thing I ran was one Startling Megaphone. I kind of want to be one of those people who's like, I run one Startling Megaphone because Garbodor's a thing. Garbodor's not a thing. I run Startling Megaphone because Floatstone is a thing. Your opponent thinks they're like super cheeky and they put a Floatstone on one of their Pokemon like a Sigilyph or something. Like they go Floatstone, Sigilyph, put Sigilyph out, and then you use Starling Megaphone, and all of a sudden their Sigilyph is just sitting there being super useless unless they want to sacrifice an energy to it to get it out of there. I love this thing. This thing's great. I probably wouldn't run it at any more than 1, but I do really like it at 1. And that's pretty much the entire deck, guys. So in my first match, I was going up against a Donphan deck. It did just fine against that deck. My opponent will tell you otherwise. My opponent was like, "Oh man, you're so lucky. You're lucky that you end that one time, and I lost that one card that I really needed to win the game." And I was like, "Dude, that was like the second turn. Like, did you really need something the second turn to win?" It's like, "Yep. If I had that, you would have lost the match. I had that match in the bag." And I'm like, "Okay, well, when we were looking at the scoreboard, it said 2-0 in my favor. So, GG, I guess." And I won that match with pretty much no problems. Let me think. I went 2-0. Second match, I went up against, crap, what was it? I think it was like a steel deck or something. And steel is kind of a problem for this deck because you rely so heavily on your poison. Poison is so important for getting your damage. But honestly, like it didn't really bother me too much. Whenever they did happen to get that stadium in play that stopped you from poisoning, I normally stepped over that with a Verbank, or I just put a muscle band on and got pretty much the same results. Like I did have to three-shot some stuff. Aegis Slash obviously a huge problem, but like I said before, you get a Gengar with 3 Psychic Energy, and Aegis Slash isn't looking so scary anymore. So that was really good. Third match was against my dreaded, the one deck that I did not want to fight that entire tournament. Somebody brought out the Yveltal on me, and I was like, ah, snap. So Yveltal drops, and I'm like, oh crap. Like, I won the first match barely. My opponent had one prize left, and I happened to top deck that Lysander that let me get out an injured Yveltal EX that I finished off, and I got both of my prizes and won the game. And then we go into the second match, and is it duel or match for that? I always get that confused. Whatever. We played for the second time, and we we ended up being pretty close. Like time ended up running out on it because my opponent like is really slow. And like I was saying before, I had 5 prizes. He had 4 prizes. When time ran out, he cheated. He ended up taking an extra turn that he wasn't supposed to, and he kept changing the story too. I keep going back to this. I keep saying I'm gonna let it go, but this is kind of like these videos are kind of my way of venting stuff. So, um, like at first he was like, "Oh, but like he said that on your turn. He called time on your turn, so I get another turn." And then when the judges came over, he was like, "Oh, yeah, well, like it sounded on my turn, but only 2 turns have passed." And I'm like, "Oh no, but see that Sigilif, it had 0 damage when I set it out, and it took 3 damage 2 times, and then Gengar was out." So like, it's over, dude. You lost. He's like, "Oh no, that Sigilif already had 3 damage counters on it." And I'm like, "Dude, you're a liar." But we ended up arguing for a while, and I didn't want to keep arguing with him because like we were holding up the entire tournament, and I was like, whatever, just let him have one more turn. I already know what he's gonna do. He's gonna Lysander something out and kill it. Lysander, and I'm like, yep, there it is. Guess this is a draw because I won the first match and he won the second match, so like it was a tie. And yeah, still pretty salty about that, but I promise I'm gonna let it go after this video because you guys have given me the chance to vent. So then I go to my last match, and the last match was the deck that I was most excited and most afraid to fight, and it was the Landorus Mega Manectric. Um, the thing about that is, like, I might have actually lost that match, but he went Mega Manectric and Landorus, and also Mega Lucario, so a lot of, well, not Mega Lucario, F. He also went Lucario EX, and Lucario EX is where most of my prizes came from. Most of my gameplay was Lysandering out Lucario and then hitting him for 120, and then he would take poison damage, and that would be good. One of my favorite things was if I happen to get Verbank and the muscle band out, then I would hit for 160. At the end of the turn, he'd take 30 damage and lose. So yeah, if I didn't have those Lucarios to feed off of, I might have actually lost both of those matches, but I didn't. And the second match, like, the first match, he was kind of bubbly. He was, like, not taking things seriously. He didn't even know what any of my cards did. He had to keep reading them and stuff. And he kept forgetting what his cards did, too. I had to keep reminding him to do stuff like place damage with Landorus and stuff, which I probably shouldn't have done in a tournament, but, you know, I've got a very teachy personality, so I have to teach people stuff. And, yeah, like he honestly wasn't as scary as I thought he was. Second match, he took it super seriously. He was on point with everything that he did. And as soon as I got that Sigilif with the float stone out there, like he just kept raging. He kept like hitting the table and stuff, and that was pretty funny from my point of view because I really like trolly stuff like that. So that's pretty much everything. I've been talking for like 45 minutes. I doubt anybody actually watched the video this far, but if anybody did, if anybody likes the way I talk about things super detailed and whatnot, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button down there. If you have any thoughts on the deck, maybe some adjustments you think I should make, I'm probably not going to make those adjustments because chances are our two stores play very differently. Like this deck is very, very, very tailored to beat the people in my area, which I feel decks should be. I feel like you shouldn't just net deck and then like run one deck that you expect to win everywhere. Like this deck is very good at beating everything in my area, and if I move to another area, then I will tailor it to beat whatever's there. But leave me your thoughts anyway. I want to know if anybody else runs something like this and does well. And we need to get Gengar out there, guys. Like he's a really good underdog. And go ahead and leave me a like if you also liked it too. I'll give you a hint. It's the button that looks like this. Hit this one, please. I like those. Those are great. They make me feel all jiggly inside. And that's about it. Thank you for watching, and Kudou out.